You might ask, who are they? They are the others who are also invited, who are not fans nor followers of Jesus. They're watching Jesus closely, not out of admiration, not out of inspiration, not even out of curiosity, but out of suspicion and disdain. The hope is to catch him doing something that violates the law. These rulers and elders want to confirm him as a threat, a fake, a fraud that must be either ignored or immediately eliminated. If we can't destroy him, we want something with which we can discredit him. This kind of environment won't change at all for Jesus. Always being watched and always being doubted despite being powerful, anointed, and effective. It won't matter the power of his message or the transformation of human lives through his ministry. He will still be considered a fraud by some, a scam artist by others, a devil by a select few. Nonetheless, in this convoluted gathering, there is also a man who is suffering with what they call dropsy. His body swells beyond comfort. It's painful, to say the least, concerning to him and those who know him, and it puts his life at great risk. Could he have been planted at this dinner because those watching Jesus know that much of what draws people to Jesus are the reports of this incredible anointing displayed in miracle working? Or did the man just show up having been invited, determined that he would live until living was no longer a blessed privilege for him? Did he hear that Jesus was invited, and this man then begged up on an opportunity, or decided to take the host up on the invitation in hopes that maybe Jesus could offer him a miracle? I think it's interesting that the New International Version says Jesus, upon seeing the man, asked the Pharisees, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" But the New King James Version says, answering them, Jesus spoke, saying, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" In the New International Version, Jesus asks to initiate the exchange, but in the New King James Version, Jesus initiates the exchange by answering the rulers. It's interesting because there is no verse that precedes it that asks a question to Jesus about the man or his painful and worrisome condition. There is no mention of the interpretation of the law and what might be the lawful or appropriate way to handle this man and his life-threatening ailment. It's as if Jesus absorbs the setting, feels the suspicion, wants to heal the man's condition and cut through all of this tension. And without the rulers asking the question, Jesus answers, "You all are wondering what I'm going to do with this man in front of me. You know this man needs healing. You know that I can compassionately extend the law, which I came to fulfill in my ministry and to which I intend to obediently respect. I already know your question. Will I heal him on the Sabbath?" And Jesus then teaches them, "You bet I will." And you want to know why? You want to know my why as to why he's going to be healed? Because people matter to God more than our interpretations of what pleases God matter to us. The Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Protecting a skewed interpretation of the law is never licensed to ignore the need to heal this man, even if it is on the Sabbath. This low-level thinking is why it's so thick and tense in here. And of course, Jesus then heals the man. The Pharisees knew he would. Everybody present knew he would. Jesus knew he would. I don't pray without knowing that the Lord is going to respond in power. I don't walk into a spiritual space without knowing that the entire force of heaven is being brought to bear on this space. Anything can happen anywhere where I am positioned. Why? Because I walk in expecting it. What these rulers did not know was how Jesus would shape this teaching moment. And in the continuation of that powerful teaching moment, Jesus tells them a parable about invited guests to a feast, who upon arrival all enter racing competitively to the best places, because this is what he observed at the house since he's been inside. Jesus says, when you are invited to a wedding feast, don't seek and sit in the best places. The assumption that you're entitled to sit there is wrong. Your assessment of how you rank among others present is wrong. The nurturing of such an overinflated self-perception is wrong. Don't live like that. Ranking, rating, and racing to the best seats based on this overly romanticized opinion of oneself makes easy the diagnosis of inner disease. When you race to place yourself like this, one more honorable who has too been invited will prompt the one who extended the invitation to come to you and say, you got to give up your spot. It wasn't for you in the first place, and it's apparent that it doesn't fit you. And in the shame of it all, you'll have to move down from that place, down from an overinflated perception of yourself, down from unhealthy perspectives, down because of internal misalignment, down because of spiritual depravity. Jesus says, but when you are invited, come in and race to the lowest place. In fact, go straight to the lowest place. Run to it. Race to it. It's when the one who invites you, who sees you racing to the lowest place, he'll come to you, verse 10, and say, friend, go up higher. Now remember, this parable is in response to the tense setting Jesus finds himself in among Pharisees and rulers, with the tension of what Jesus might do with this man who is suffering from dropsy. Remember, there is this disdain for Jesus and the want to destroy or severely discredit him. And it's in this context that Jesus is conveying this message to the Pharisees and the rulers and to all who are gathered for that matter. Let's bring down, this is what he's teaching, let's bring down these overinflated impressions of self. Let's bring it down. These feelings of entitlement, these assumptions of accentuated importance that have your judgment skewed until you elevate your interpretation of God above God's generous invitation to people. Because the fight is never between the law regarding the Sabbath and a man or woman's need for healing. No day is out of order for putting people first. No setting becomes the wrong time to extend the grace and the power of God. No rule, religious or otherwise, is more important than liberating a person from what limits them. And no personal ranking, self-perceived or publicly granted, makes your suspicions more weighted than God's freedom and sovereignty to act. Lest I remind us, God can bless who he wants to. God can free who he wants to. God can heal who he wants to, whenever he wants to, wherever he wants to, period. And while there are countless things that could be taught us from this text, Jesus makes one thing crystal clear. He wants you, me, us, to steward life in a way that he can invite you to come up higher. He wants to invite you to come up higher. He doesn't want you to settle for the lowest place, but he wants you to humble yourself to accept it so that he can invite you to a higher place. Because you can't handle more or higher or greater or substantial if you think you're entitled to it. But if you accept the lowest place and can be grateful to the Lord from there, he can bless you to come up higher. Can I tell you that this is so refreshing? Because it's been such a low year. And it's caused everybody, every one of us, to question self, to question others, to question God. It's caused isolated and deep inner reflection. More prescriptions have been given to people for diagnosis of deep depression in 2020. We've seen far too many overinflate their perceptions of self, to flex muscle politically or financially or technologically or spiritually. Far too many opinions of each other with limited intimate knowledge of a person's actual life. And while never saying it, Jesus has been answering the questions we live with but are afraid to ask. And I know this text is revealing to us that God has a place for you at the feast, and he has a reason for where he's planting you, and you accept where it starts, because whenever humility helps you make decisions for your life, Jesus will always respond to your humility by inviting you to come up higher. Isn't that good news? This is the path awaiting us in a fresh new year. Sober your judgments. Enter into the year feeling less entitled. Learn to be a good steward with your comparisons of you versus other people and questions and suspicions related to other people. Think about yourself and others with a lot more mercy. Relate to others with a whole lot more patient hope and another chance kind of grace. Because I promise you, if you enter the feast humble, God will invite you to come up higher. It's why James chapter 4 reminds us, humble yourselves before the Lord and he will lift you up in honor. Here is what the text is teaching us. God does the lifting in your life. Now, you may not think that's weighted, but maybe I should add to it the other side. And that's why you don't have to carry the weight of trying to lift yourself. You don't ever have to chase a thing. And I might add to that, you ain't got to chase a person either. God will invite you to come up higher. Not one person at the feast could invite themselves to it, because it's not their feast to invite people to. Nor could they determine planting and placements once having arrived. Why? Because it's all arranged by the one who invites others to his feast. It's his feast at his house. He extends his invitations. He prearranged the seating, and whatever constitutes higher is determined by the host.